I don't know what Christmas traditions you have in your house. I might have a new one given last night's experience of going to the Dave Bennett Sextet with the Elkhart Civic Symphony. That was terrific. We have another tradition in my family that is a musical one that's directly traceable to Creekside Church, most specifically to our youth who have been part of the Concord Christmas Spec over the years. I think we started when Mark Arnold was playing with the orchestra. Brian was part of that group. More recently, Maddie was in the orchestra at Concord. And we're happy that Alyssa Marson is continuing in the family tradition of singing in the choir for that group. So Tim and I were able to go to Christmas Spec last Sunday afternoon. It was a great show, as always. It was a little bit different this year. Some of you may have heard something about that. There was a tremendous amount of pressure on not just the performers, the students who are part of that show, more than 600 kids who are trying to get costumes changed and hit their light cues and learn their music. Also a lot of pressure on the directors and on the school administrators around questions about a live nativity scene, the nativity tableau that's part of the second half of that program. What I remember from previous years is when the nativity scene would appear on the stage, there was silence, either out of reverence or respect or apathy or cynicism, whatever it was. That was not the case this year. This year, when the curtains opened on the nativity tableau, there were cheers and whistles and loud applause that lasted for probably a minute or so. And I turned to Tim, I said, "Mary and Joseph are rock stars." And of course, it made me wonder why we don't respond to the Holy Family like that all the time. I mean, good heavens, we hardly even talk about them during the rest of the year. We have these beautiful nativity figures. In a couple weeks, we're going to send them up to the attic, and we won't let them come down until late November. There are other traditions where Mary, in particular, is treated like a rock star. I bet some of you, even now, have nativity sets out in your homes for your personal observances, have the Holy Family out. I know that the wise men have visited Doris Walter's house. Maybe we value these things differently when we realize that we can't simply take them for granted. I'm grateful that we live in a place where we have the freedom to choose our religion or to choose no religion at all. Not everybody in the world enjoys that freedom. But I hope it's also a reminder that Christmas traditions, no matter how much we love and value them, should never be confused with belief and faith in Jesus Christ. Christmas traditions can change. Our kids get older, move out of the house. Maybe we have health concerns or financial concerns that mean we can't celebrate Christmas the way that we used to. Or maybe this year there are grandchildren to celebrate Christmas with. Christmas traditions change. Our faith in Jesus Christ is something that no one can take away from us. Now, we can give our faith away out of despair. We can fritter it away in complacency. We can lose it in shame. We can let it die of neglect. But no one can take that faith away from us if we choose not to let it go. In fact, all the evidence is that in places where Christianity is challenged and even persecuted, places like Ecclesia Ayanua, Nigeria, in northeastern Nigeria, that faith actually grows and flourishes. This passage that Sue read from us from Luke 1, Mary's song, reminds me why she deserves to be treated like a rock star and why she is in many other Christian traditions. She has had a huge impact on Christian faith and tradition, especially for somebody who doesn't appear in the biblical record all that much. Mary speaks only 4 times in the Bible. The first was the passage right before this one where an angel appears to Mary, and Mary and the angel have a dialogue about her going to bear the Son of the Most High. The second, and by far the longest speech, is the one that Sue read for us from Luke 1. The third time is when her son, Jesus, who for the first 12 years of his life was pretty much the perfect child, they went on a family pilgrimage to Jerusalem, and he stayed behind in the temple and didn't tell them, cost his family a couple days' travel to go back, and she said, "Son, what were you thinking? We were worried sick about you." And the fourth time is when she is at a wedding with Jesus and goes to tell him that the hosts have run out of wine. And she directs the servants to do whatever he tells them to. Those are the only 4 times that Mary actually speaks. Now, there's other times that she shows up. We see her on the road to Jerusalem, to Bethlehem, with her husband Joseph. She is obviously present at the birth of Christ, but she doesn't speak. It's interesting that Luke records Mary's response to the angels and the shepherds. She pondered these things in her heart. But he doesn't say anything about what Joseph thought of the whole affair. We know that Mary and Joseph take their infant son to the temple for purification when he's 8 days old. She and Joseph flee to Egypt. Mary shows up with Jesus' brothers as a disciple to hear his teaching. She's at the foot of the cross for his crucifixion, and she's praying with the apostles in the upper room after Jesus' resurrection. These are the only glimpses of Mary that we get in the Bible. But there is some pretty significant stuff here, particularly these words from Luke 1. They're known as the Magnificat. They have been recited and set to music for centuries. We sang a couple of those settings in our service already this morning, so I'm not going to read the whole passage for you. We don't know if these words were original to Mary or if they were part of a first century hymn that already existed, and she adapted them for this purpose. Either way, you have to hand it to this young woman. She is pretty amazing. These are not easy circumstances that she has found herself in. She is unexpectedly pregnant, probably would be outcast by her community and her family. She was almost divorced by the man that she was engaged to. She doesn't know what the future holds for her. But into that uncertain space, she responds with a song of joy and praise, a song about God's faithfulness. She proclaims the justice and mercy of God and God's care for the poor. It is an extraordinary statement of faith. And it's also a radical reversal of the social order. This girl, she's not only a poet, she's a prophet. Not in the sort of wild-eyed sense of Jesus' cousin, John the Baptist, but a prophet nonetheless. One of my favorite musical settings of the Magnificat text is in the Sing the Story songbook. I don't know if you have one handy, the purple songbooks. If you don't worry about it, but when you go out to the gathering area later on, take a look at number 13. Has an interesting title, a title that we might not always associate with Mary, the mother of Jesus. It's called Sing We a Song of High Revolt. Revolt, right? Revolt, that's like what peasants do with torches and pitchforks. This idea of being revolting reminds me, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the satire by Mel Brooks, History of the World, Part 1. There's a scene where a French nobleman called Count de Money, this is a satire of the rich and their indifference to the poor. Count de Money arrives at the Temple of Versailles and goes to the king and says, "Your Majesty, the people are revolting." And Mel Brooks says, "You said it. The people stink on ice." It's funnier when Mel Brooks says it. Revolution may not be one of our beloved Christmas images, but it is one of Mary's gifts to the Christmas narrative. We may prefer Mary silently adoring the baby Jesus, but we should not ignore her larger role in the Christmas story. She is not only the mother of Jesus, she is the bearer of God. And the early Christian church gave her a special name. Comes from the Greek. It's Theotokos, mother, bearer of God. Theotokos. We have somebody in our congregation who has a similar name. Do you know who that is? He is here today. His name is Christopher, Christbearer. That's what your name means, Chris. Did you know that? Christopher. Because although we may not be able to physically carry a baby inside of us, even if you never have been or never will be pregnant, that is the kind of anticipation and discomfort that we are called to in this season of Advent, as each of us is called to be a Christ bearer. Birth is the beginning. It's not an end point. Babies rearrange priorities and schedules. They change the way that we imagine the future. And that's what we are called to be, someone who bears Christ to the world. Mary is the only person who carried the human Christ in her body. And for that, she deserves our reverence and praise. She deserves a place on our Christmas cards, in our nativity sets, in our celebrations, and in our worship services. But her witness is so much bigger than our Christmas traditions. Mary challenges us to interact with our families, our classmates, our co-workers, and our church family to carry Christ in those places, to embody Christ in the ambitious ways that we seek to be a presence in this community, offering comfort and hope and a loving God by loving people. To embody the love of Christ in dark and difficult places in this world, places where we could not possibly have the strength to go were it not for Christ who strengthens us. Places like Nigeria, Syria, or Elkhart, Indiana. So you don't have to leave home in order to bear Christ. There's plenty of need for the love of Christ wherever we find ourselves. My hope for us is that this Christmas we, like Mary, would find ways to bear Christ in the world. I'd like to leave you with some of the words from that setting of Magnificat that I talked about that's in Sing the Journey. God calls us to revolt and trust, to work for what is right and just, to catch the vision Mary caught, to live and sing Magnificat. I pray that we will be revolting in the coming year. Amen.